Today we're gonna talk the beginnings and like an overview of the halacha of what it means to have Kedushas Shevi'is. And I'm gonna start by telling you, Torah has two psukim that tell us what you're supposed to do with your food on Shemittah, and it says, okay, so Torah is telling you now what you're supposed to do with things that you have on Shemittah. There's another pasuk also. I'll get to in a second. Okay, so from these psukim we learn the following. Okay, but the way this is in my mind, there are four things that we learn out from these dinim. I don't know if I'm exactly right. And not every one, even though they're going to be from the psukim, not everything I'm about to say is deraisa. Some of these things are just asmachtas. Okay, and it goes like this. Okay, from the fact that it says in the pasuk, that you should eat it. So we learn out from there that you're not allowed to waste things that have Kedushas Shevi'is. That we're going to spend plenty of time talking about that in the future. Not so much today, but for the future. Okay. Then another din is we learn out from the fact that it says ba'artzecha tia kol tfuasa. We learn out from there that the food of Shevi'is needs to be kept in Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to take it out of Eretz Yisrael. That'll be Mitzvah Shem for next time. We'll talk about that din that you're not allowed to take the produce out of Eretz Yisrael. Okay. A third din is again from the word la'achla. We learn out that la'achla b'lo l'schayra. Okay. You're not allowed to do business with it in the regular way that you do business with other produce. And Mitzvah Shem also next time about what that means. La'achla b'lo l'schayra. And the last is we learn out from the fact that the pasuk says we learn out that you can only eat it. You can only keep it at home when it's available for the chayes. When it's out for the wild animals, can still get it. But kol l'chayim in the sada, once it's not available out in the sada, then you can't keep it in your house. That's the mitzvah beer. Probably we'll do that next time also. Be'antacha means the inside use. The same thing. The point is that in your house, the behemoth is as in what you take care of by yourself. So if you took in 20 pounds of apples, that you're not allowed to keep those anymore. And we'll find that, I think, next time about what that means is what the mitzvah beer is. Okay. So the we're going to start in our discussion. It's sort of like introducing to the whole dinim is the pasuk says here. Two times it says in these psukim that you should eat it. It says and then it says at the end and there's another pasuk that says and those who hold, we'll see what that is in a second. There are those who hold that there's a mitzvah d'oraisa to eat pears that have Kedushas Shevi'is to them. The Torah says two times here and one time in the other pasuk, you're mechuyev to eat it. The way the Ramban says this is, how come it says and it doesn't say like it says by Matnasaniyim. It says you should leave it for them. The fact that it says you should eat it, it gives the impression that you're mechuyev to eat it, and you're not allowed to eat it, but that you're mechuyev to eat it. Okay. Also, another right to it is another reason to think that it's a mitzvah to eat it. The Yerushalmi says like this: you're not mechayev a person to eat lepash ifsha, leknuvas yeruk, letashur shuleskakul tzurasoi. That means pash ifsha. We know what that means. That just spoils. Excuse me. Where's the spelling mistake?
Second line.
Where's the? No, it's not spelling mistake. That's the Yerushalmi spelling. That's the Yerushalmi spelling. A different way of spelling. Okay. So it says It says you're not mechuyev to eat pash ifsha, bread that's spoiling. Knuvas yeruk, we're going to come back to. Knuvas yeruk means is that when you peel vegetables, you peel things of the garbage, the part that you're not going to use. That's a knuvas yeruk. When or a food that's spoiling or starting to spoil, you're not mechuyev to eat it. So why did Yerushalmi say you're not mechuyev to eat these things? It sure sounds like in general you're mechuyev to eat the pears Shevi'is. And these things you're not mechuyev. If it gets to the point that it's not edible, then you're not mechuyev to eat it. As if everything else.
Right.
No. If it meant that you're allowed to be mafsid, it would have said you could be mafsid. Why is it you're not mechuyev to eat this thing? Wait a minute, I wasn't mechuyev to eat anything. So it sounds like I am mechuyev to eat other things. If there's a regular apple that's not spoiled, I am mechuyev to eat it.
What does that mean?
That means because there are some which hold that there's those who learn that the Ramban holds that it's one of the Taryag mitzvahs is to eat Pear Shvius.
What does it mean? I'm going to eat Shvius all day. I'm going to eat every Pear Shvius in the world. I'm going to eat every Shvius I own.
Okay. It's a question whether it's a mitzvah chiyumis or mitzvah kiyumis. But at least
so it's not like
maybe
You with me, huh?
you actually go around eating everybody's food.
What's the...
Okay. I'm not sure exactly how far we go.
Like Elohim Kippur. Very moment.
Yeah.
Like Elohim Kippur.
Right. Okay. So it's a there are those who hold it's possibly pshat in Ramban in Sefer Mitzvahs that it should be you include to eat it. And what the reason where it fits into Ramban Sefer Mitzvahs is the Sefer Mitzvahs, of course, the Rambam has what he considers the mitzvahs. The Ramban has a pirush on that where he writes why he disagrees with him on points. So what happens is the Ramban disagreed with the Rambam on a whole number of mitzvahs. So now the Ramban is short in his Taryag mitzvahs. Okay, if I don't think that this is a mitzvah, well then I'm short one or two. So at the end of the mitzvah say, well, I'm going to show it to you in a second. At the end of the mitzvah say, the Ramban says, here are the 17 mitzvahs that I have to add on because the Rambam, he didn't go like that, but because I just knocked off 17 mitzvahs from the Rambam, I'm going to add in 17 of my own mitzvahs. Okay, he doesn't quote that. He says, these are the 17 mitzvahs that the Rambam forgot to count. Okay, right? These are the ones that he forgot to count. Okay, so the third of those is the one that, if you, depending on how you read it, it's a very questionable reading, how to read it. One reading of that mitzvah is that it's a mitzvah, say, to eat Pear Shvius. Okay? That's one way. No. It's too complicated. It's like a long... No, really, you can look at it yourself. It's the third one. There's only 17 of them. It's the third one. And I'm going to show you something else in a second about it. But this is the third one, and you'll see that you can back and forth how to read what he's trying to say. Because, and the other side of that is that the Rambam... Well, first of all, of course, is the Rambam doesn't count it. Okay? The Ramban, the whole point of what I just said to you is that the Rambam does not count it. The Ramban, who does count it, the Chazon Ish says even the Ramban himself doesn't mean that. Okay? And what the Ramban really means is, what the Ramban really means is that there's a mitzvah say to not be mafsid Pear Shvius. Okay? The way the Megillah says is that it's a lav haba machlal asay, that the Ramban holds lav haba machlal asay is an asay, so it's a lav. Don't be mafsid it, don't do schara with it. The Ramban talks a lot about schara, and that mitzvah, that third mitzvah that he talks a lot about doing schara. It sure implies that it has to do with the Isra of schara, that the mitzvah say is to not do schara. Now, how can the mitzvah say be to not do schara? Meaning it's a lav haba machlal asay, and since it's lav haba machlal asay, that's considered to be an asay. So, what is...
That's what he's trying to say, Pshat Yisham.
That what? That Doug was trying to say. That's a lav haba machlal asay. Okay, I'll get to Yisham in 1 second. Just give me a second. We'll get to Yisham. Okay, so the one thing is, the Chazon Ish says it based on just, when you read the Ramban, you see he talks all about schara. And that's how Chazon Ish learns it. The Megillah says there in Beis and Gimel, the two mitzvahs around it, he keeps talking about the Shita of the Ramban about lav haba machlal asay counts as mitzvah say. Okay. But now, look at this deed that Rabbi Shwais makes like this. He said, Rabbi Shwais makes like this. If you look, okay, these are the Shichas Hasan, okay, you're going to now see the 17 mitzvah say, in short, really short, 17 mitzvahs say that the Ramban says that the Ramban says we're listed. Okay, and if you look at them, the third one is the one that we care about. Okay, so look at what goes on. This is the Dika Rosh Hashanah. Okay, the 17 mitzvahs, 16 out of the 17 mitzvahs start off with the words Shenitz Tavinu. The mitzvah Shonit, mitzvah to do this thing. Mitzvah Shonit, mitzvah to do this thing. Each one is mitzvah to do this thing. Mitzvah to do this thing. And there's only one exception. That's the mitzvah shlishas, that's our mitzvah. He doesn't say shenitz tavinu to do a certain thing. He says she'amar Torah b'Peir Shvi'is la'achlav what is chayra b'ba, and it goes on. He talks about whatever he says. So why for 16 out of 17 does he say we're mitzvah tavinu to do a specific thing, and only one of them does he not say shenitz tavinu? So Rosh Hashanah says. So you see that the Ramban did not mean to say that this is a mitzvah say that you're mechuyev to eat Peir Shvi'is. He's medayek from that the Ramban means the chayra, which you'll read when you read it inside. You'll see this. You can both ways. The Ramban doesn't mean it's a mitzvah say that you should eat Peir Shvi'is. He means it's a lav haba machlal say that you should not be mafsid Peir Shvi'is. But he said you should not do schara with Peir Shvi'is. Okay, so that's a shayla on how to read it. Okay, there's another dik. It's not a dik in Ramban. Is Chaim Kanievsky brings. He says that there's a mitzvah. You make a bracha when you eat truma. You make a bracha. He holds when you eat ma'aser sheni. Okay, but it doesn't say any place that there's a bracha to eat when you eat Peir Shvi'is, which he says is a dik. He says it has to do with the way the psukim say. By the other things it says you should eat them. Okay, I forgot the wording. The other ones it says That's one of his psukim. You should eat it. And here the lashon is a little bit more passive. It's it's a little more passive. So Chaim Kanievsky said that's the reason why there's no bracha. But Hagufa, that there's no bracha, when people in Ma'aser Sheni, when they eat truma, they make a bracha. Hashem Kedushas Shevi'is, they mechuyev to eat. They have a bracha when you eat it, and there's no bracha when you eat Kedushas Shevi'is. And therefore, he was a time that you should just know for your curiosity. I don't think the Rav Kook holds that it's a mitzvah, but he does say, he talks about it, you should wash your hands before you eat it. I think it's more a hashkaf. I don't think he thinks it's a din. Okay, fine. So now, the Lamais is we do have a question from the Yerushalmi. There's many different answers to the question from the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi said, you're not mechuyev to eat it. I'll tell you two of the answers. One is, Rav Kook himself says that the answer to the shaila is, it's a borrowed lashon. Okay? In Hilchos Trumas it's a similar din. So when the Yerushalmi says, Ei mechayev l'shal lecho, is because by Truma it is a similar kind of a lashon, and it's more appropriate, so it's a borrowed lashon. Okay. Rav Asher Weiss has an interesting answer, and that is like this. He says, if you remember the cases that it said, I don't have it here on the screen, the three cases that were Ei mechayev l'shal to eat, Pasha Ifsha, Knuvas Yarak, and Kashrus that was losing its surah. I forgot what the words are. Okay? You're not going to eat those things. So he says, maybe, the reason why the Yerushalmi says it is because like this. In each one of those things, the reason why the food is about to spoil is because of something that you did to get it to that point. If you had grains of wheat, they wouldn't spoil. They just sit around for long times. The reason why your bread is spoiling is because you went ahead and ground it up, made it into flour, baked it into bread. Bread only lasts for a couple of days. You peel the vegetable, so the whole vegetable lasts for a long time. You're the one who's causing it to get spoiled faster, or the tafshil, also by cooking it up. You're leading towards the hefsid. So maybe if you got into this mess, you're the one who got the food to that point, maybe then you'd be mechuyev to be eaten even to a further point. To that, the Yisham said, no, you're not mechuyev to. At a certain point, it's not edible, you don't have to do anything, it's not a problem. But the reason why you would think it is because of the specific examples that the Yerushalmi gives of things where you did something to get it to this point, so maybe then you sort of like took on the responsibility to take care of this food. Okay, that's what he says about how
it's like you're mafsid.
Right, well, if you got it to this point, you better eat it before you make the hefsid because you messed it up. Yesterday you turned it into a loaf of bread. You better get rid of it before then. So the Yisham says you're not mechuyev to. But that would have been the tzad. That's why it talks in such lashon. What do you say?
It's about bread.
Because
bread's an improvement on the grains.
You're saying because then it was worthless before. Yeah. It was worthless. Okay, no, but you're the one who got it to this.
That's what you're supposed to do with grains. Just make that.
Okay.
Maybe you did it. Maybe I think you.
Okay, so we'll go on. We work with the assumption. Everybody works with the assumption. Works with the assumption that there is not a mitzvah d'oraisa to eat. There's not a mitzvah anything. There's not a mitzvah d'oraisa to rub on anything. There's no mitzvah that you have to eat Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, so now that leads us to a second question. Okay. When we say that you're not mechuyev to eat, we say you're not mechuyev to eat Kedushas Shevi'is, that means is, as I said, you're not allowed to do hefsid. We'll talk about more in the future. Like, I can't take the Kedushas Shevi'is and put it into a place where it's going to be spoiled. I can't put it into a place where it's really hot or something like that. It's going to get spoiled. But I'm also not mechuyev to do things to save it. So if I have soup and I finish eating it, I don't have to put it in the refrigerator. I'm not mechuyev to do something to save the Kedushas Shevi'is. I don't have to keep it going. I can't ruin it. I can't put it in a place where it's going to get spoiled. But I'm not mechuyev to save it either. I want to leave it out. If it spoils, it spoils. And at that point, then I'll do what I want to do with it. We'll talk about in a second what I do with it. But I don't have to actively save it. I can just leave what it is. But there's a shayla nechana as follows.
You know, it's something that's going to happen immediately.
It's going to happen. Because I took out the soup. I ate what I wanted to do.
Right away, apple.
Right. I'm not going to do things to save it. I don't have to put it to the fridge or something like that. But there's a shayla like this. There's the Marit declares whether there's an isser to be goyrim the hefsid of the food. Goyrim means not that I just leave it out. That I wasn't goyrim. It just happened by itself. I was eating some bread. If I don't put it back into the container, it's going to spoil. We're talking about goyrim where you did something that would have caused a Gramah. And he says like this. The Yerushalmi says, this is a different Yerushalmi, that when you have this knuvas yarak, you have the leftovers, the trimmings from when you're preparing vegetables, you can put them onto the roof where they dry out and they become meichel behema. So he says, how come I'm allowed to put them onto the roof? I'm going to dry them out. I'm going to turn them from Michael Adam into Michael Behema. That's a downgrade. You're allowed to give things to behemoths only if they're not fit for people.
Well, why aren't you eating it yourself? Obviously, they're not good for you. So not.
Well, right now it just came off the vegetable. Right now I just took it off the vegetable, and I just...
Why did it go to the vegetable? Because they stopped for not for human consumption.
So you're saying the reason why I took it off is because Haguf is anyway. Okay, Chazal says something very similar. It's good to have you. Chazal says something very similar. I'm going to get to you in a second. The Marit says, he says, the person who's doing that is Gurim, the downgrade of these vegetables, not hefsid per se, but a relative hefsid. He's causing that, and the reason why I'm allowed to do that is because you see from there that being Gurim hefsid is not. There's no issue to be Gurim hefsid. The only issue is to cause hefsid directly, be a dime, but to be Gurim hefsid is not a problem. Those of you who are listening on Wednesday, what I'm about to say should sound familiar. Okay, so the Chazon Ish, I didn't see that the Chazon Ish talks about this shall be gram hefsid. I'll tell you in a second others who do, and not that I'm such a bucky in Chazon Ish, but when Chaim Kanievsky brings this marit, he does not bring a Chazon Ish who says one way or the other way. So that tells me there's probably not a Chazon Ish about it, because I mean he's on the money every time. There's always the Chazon Ish there. So for this one, he just brings the marit. He doesn't say and the Chazon Ish says this way or that way. So it makes me feel like there's probably not. But I saw the Chazon Ish talk about the marit in stop talk about it, not talk about whether the din is correct, just to talk about what the marit says. And he says, listen here. He talks about the marit from two angles. He says, on the one hand, what the marit is saying, he doesn't understand that. He says, if putting the vegetables onto the roof is going to dry them out, that's not gram hefsid. He says, there are cases of gram hefsid, but that's not what this is. He says, if I put it on the roof and that makes it dry out, that's hefsid b'yadayim. Like I said to you before, you can't put it into the sun that it's going to spoil. You can't put it someplace where it's going to get ruined. He says, so what's the difference if I put it onto the roof and I dry it out? I mean, maybe it's not boiling hot up there, but if that's going to make it dry out. Chazon says, no, the reason, the truth is you are allowed to. You're allowed to, the Rishon says you're allowed to put it onto the roof, and that's because the Kedushas Shevi'is as it stands now is not something that anybody was going to eat. He doesn't say you can't eat. He says it's not something that anyone's going to eat. And since it's not that someone's going to eat, over here it's going to rot. Over here it's going to turn completely not even fit for animals. So what I'm doing is actually saving the Kedushas Shevi'is by making it royal l'ma'achal behema. If I would leave it as is, it would spoil. So what I'm doing is helping the parents, and that's why it's okay. Okay, but the others.
Kanish is saying that maybe gram hefsid is also.
He doesn't talk about whether it's mutter usher. He just talks about the raya from the Yerushalmi. He doesn't talk about if it's mutter usher. That's what I'm saying. I said from Chaim Kanievsky. I didn't see that he talked about specifically is it mutter usher. He just talked about what the marit's raya was. He didn't talk about the din itself. Okay, the others who say that gram hefsid might be usher, and they bring a dig from the following. I think this is coming next. Okay, it's like this. The Rambam says, Paris hamichod l'ma'achal adam. If you have things that are meant for humans, okay, you have a banana meant for people, you can't give it to a behemoth. You can't let behemoths eat it because that's not considered a proper use for the fruit to give it to a behemoth because it's meant for people. It's a higher way of use. What happens if the behemoth went ahead to eat it by itself? The behemoth dragging around and he's eating some of the tomatoes that are growing. You're not mechuyev to stop the animal from doing that. Okay, you're not mechuyev to. Why? Because the pasuk says that you don't have to stop them. You don't have to stop them from eating the pears because it's the Torah is giving a special license that the behemoths can eat it, even what's really ma'achal adam. You're not allowed to feed it to them, but if they do it themselves, you're allowed to do it. So they say, wait a second. Why do we need the pasuk for? Why do you need a pasuk to tell you that you let the animals do it? It's not more than a Gramah. Letting the animal take the food by himself would be just a Gramah. Implied that Gramah of the Hesed would be usher, and this is your animal. You'd have to stop the animal from by letting your animal go there. You'd be girding the Hesed. So we have a special pasuk because you know it's not a Gramah of the Hesed. But otherwise, if not for such a pasuk, we would have said no. You're not allowed to do it. This is a Gramah of the Hesed.
Sorry, why is it a Gramah? I left my tahim around. The animal went ate. It's not a Gramah.
No.
The animal walking around.
It's the animal.
Why is mine a Gramah?
I think, if I remember,
the Gramah, you said.
Yeah,
right. I think that the Gramah is the not controlling your animal, not the fruit part of it. Your animal. So what do you think the pasuk means? So you're even worse.
So
So you have a question. Right, so you're making the question worse.
Maybe it's not right. Maybe you got to find the parents. It's not right.
Okay, that's it. Okay, that's one way of saying it. Okay, if I remember, the right is because it's assumed that your animal you're supposed to be in control of. So here you think you have to control your animal that's being guarded, has to let your animal let in this yard.
Is that by your own animal or somebody else or stop an animal in the street?
Well, it doesn't say in the din which one. It says ho behema me'ela.
This is mustache.
Okay, so it's not clear. But if you want, if the pasuk was talking about your animals, and the pasuk is telling you don't be garim hefsid, by your animals you're allowed to be. It would potentially be. So if we could. But that's not an answer of being hefsid. What would be the room with that? It's not a title of hefsid.
Because it's a miyuchad.
Right, but how are you being mastered? I'm saying to you that it's a garden hefsid. You let your animal to the backyard. But that's not. But it's happening by itself. I'm not doing it. So he'll understand that what we're doing over here is if you let your animal to the backyard, now the animal's going to go eat the thing. That's the Gramah hefsid. Okay, that's a. Okay, there are those who disagree with it. Lot dafka that there's a right from here. Okay, Ken Zayn that the different answers to how you get around what Rambam says. I'm gonna. Oh, that's not good. You guys don't see it. There's something came on my screen. Okay. Anyhow. So there are those who say, Rav Chaim says it's a little bit, Mitzvah says it's sort of stronger. He says is that maybe Gram Hefsid is only usher when, what? Yeah. Sorry. He says that maybe Gramah is usher when you do something that causes a person or animal, when you cause somebody to be mafsid this thing. If you put it onto the roof and the hefset happens by itself, that might be okay. If I put it into a place where an animal's going to eat it, that's Gramah that I'm not allowed to do. Okay, and the difference in Gramah between whether I'm being garum through a person or animal, through a being, or if I'm being garum to happen naturally. Okay, in any case, but if you've got the answer or not, it's not important. In any case, there's a shayla about Gramah. Okay. The Ikar Hadin appears to be, the Ikar Hadin is that being Garim Hefsid is not Asher on Shvi'is. It's Asher to be Mafsid, to be a Daim, not Asher to be Garim Hefsid. But as I'm going to show you in a second, there are situations where people try to be Makbid to not even be Garim Hefsid. Okay? Again, so we started with is there a mitzvah dafka to eat it? No, there's no mitzvah to eat it. Is there an isser to be garim hefsid to it? It seems like the din says it's not an isser to be garim hefsid. It's a mila. I'm going to show you in a second. But what you're not allowed to do is to be mafsid if you die. Okay. A person who eats food, he eats his food perishvias and he eats the way he was supposed to. Now this guy's got leftovers. He didn't finish his whole salad, or he ate a half of an apple. Okay, and he has something left over. So what is he supposed to do with it? So he's not allowed to be matzid it. He can't. So we would tell him, don't throw it in the garbage, because he's throwing it in the garbage. Now no one's going to eat it, or now it's going to get disgusting from the other food that's in the garbage. So what is he supposed to do? So most of you are familiar with the second thing I'm about to say, but those of you who heard Rabbi Ramon, he mentioned, he brings in a sefer also. I have yet to see the sources. In the sefer he brings up a source for it, which he told me he's going to try to get for me, but so far I haven't gotten it yet. And that is that Reb Chaim Kanievsky said that it used to be in the olden days, in Yom Kadmon, whatever he calls it, in the olden days it used to be that what people would do is they would take their leftovers, put them into a bag, and then put the bag into the garbage. Just like they do with truma. Put it into a bag, wrap it up, and put it into the garbage. Okay, what's shot? Basically, when I put it into the garbage, once I take that bag and put it into the garbage, not so much that anyone's going to eat it, am I not doing a hefsid? And the shot in that is because all I'm doing there is just being garim a hefsid. I put it into a bag. When it goes into the garbage, it's sort of edible at that point also. Now maybe people will choose not to eat it, or maybe tomorrow the garbage is going to get crushed, and maybe other things are going to fall into there, but it's only on the level of a garim. Here's a whole pile of other reasons I'm not mentioning now. But it's only considered a Gramah, and therefore, since I'm only being garim the hefsid, that's okay. I didn't throw mamish into the garbage. I did something that will eventually lead that no one's going to want to eat this thing.
But why is that even a Gramah? Assuming the garbage people don't just crush it for a minute, why exactly is it even a Gramah? If I wouldn't do anything to it, what's more going to happen in the garbage in a bag? That's not going to happen but just leave it on the table.
Okay. So let's say I had a plate of a potato, and I ate half the potato. If I leave the potato on the counter, then in 5 minutes now someone could still eat the potato. It's just sitting
That's not
here.
me doing anything.
What?
That's not me doing anything.
Right now, I'm saying the potato's on the counter. The potato is still edible. Nothing's wrong with it right now. Now it's still edible. When I put it into a bag, it's also still edible. And I put the bag in the garbage. It's also at this point it's still edible. In an hour from now, if you walked over to the garbage can and you saw a potato in a bag in the garbage, then most people would choose not to eat it. So therefore, what's going to happen is that tomorrow we're going to dump more stuff onto it. The next day we're going to take it out into the yard, and the next day the garbage is going to crush it. So it's leading to a hesed. It's a Gramah of a hesed. But if I wouldn't have put it into the garbage can, I would have left it on the counter.
Okay, 2 potatoes. I put a potato, I put it on the counter, nobody looks at it, put it in the room, and it's just going to sit there. Okay. The other potatoes in a bag in the garbage. I don't know what potato A and B have any different fate. Maybe the one in the bag lives longer, actually. I mean, it's not going to be, nobody's going to dig it out, I understand, but that's not doing anything to it. If it's in the bag, if it's not in the bag, I can't. Then you should go, people are going to put stuff on it directly and get my schmears with all kinds of garbage, I don't want to get bacteria and grow up, make it ruin fast, but it's in a bag, I don't know what the difference in one sitting on the table.
So you think in the bag it's not even a Gramah of a hesed? It's going to get ruined. If I leave it on the counter, let's say it'll take 2 days for it to get spoiled on the counter.
Okay.
For 2 days it'll sit there and someone could eat it. After 2 days it's hopeless.
In a bag.
And in an hour from now no one's going to eat it either.
Why not? What would eat something in the garbage in the bag? I don't have to dig out the debris on top of it, but if it clips from that, why would I?
So you think it's not a hesed at all?
I can get that. It's not in Gramah either.
Okay. I'm not sure.
It's going to get crushed, and I hear.
Well, it's going to get crushed. Sooner or later, it's going to get crushed. Sooner or later, someone's going to do something to it that's going to make it really not edible. But even before it gets to that point, it's going to be subjectively not edible. Look, in an hour, if someone else walked into it, you put it in, you would take it out. If somebody else walked into it, they won't take it out. They won't eat it. If they saw it in the garbage, they won't eat it.
I don't know. It's a big. I don't eat it. Was it a big? Don't touch it. Here.
Okay. So maybe you think that. At the same time, even Rabbi Ramon brings that Rav Chaim Kanievsky says that nowadays, the same quote says, and nowadays, nobody does that. Nobody does. They just put it into a bag and put it in the garbage. I shouldn't say nobody, but
Nobody does what?
to just take the leftovers from Shemittah, put it into a bag and put the bag into the garbage. What they do is they use their Kashrus Shevi'is. Okay, what he had a better name for? He wanted to call it a Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, whatever. And he didn't want to call it a Kashrus. The word Pach in Eretz means a garbage can. So he wanted to call it a Kashrus, a Shevi'is garbage can. He didn't like that. It bothered his sensitivities. So he wanted to call it. He had a different name for it. But okay, anyway, everybody calls it a Kashrus Shevi'is. They have a what? So he called it. He said his pasta is on the Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, so and what they do is they take the leftovers. They take the leftovers and they put the leftovers into this container, and then basically they leave it on the counter. So you leave it on the counter, and when it's spoiled, then they throw it out. That's the short version. That's not the truth, but that's the short version. They leave it on the counter. So instead of leaving it on the table, they put it onto the counter in a pot, and it stays there, and then it's spoiled. So I would not go any hesed. I just moved it from the table to the counter, and now it's on the counter, and when it's spoiled, then I throw it out.
Maybe that's worse.
Why is that worse?
Because it's old food.
Wait, I'm getting in the short version is the theoretical short version is they put it onto the counter and it sits on the counter. So when it's spoiled, then I'm going to throw it out. That's the short version of what that's supposed to do. And the point is, by doing that, you don't have a Gramah hefsed. Okay, now it's very questionable because if you want to do it really right, not only do you have to have a separate container for each day, you have to have separate days even in the same meal. You know, if I put my apple juice into there and then I pour my pickles on top of it, I was just mafsid it myself. But just by mixing the wrong foods together, I mafsid it. And if I put today's food on top of yesterday's food, or my half-eaten piece of chicken with his, I guess chicken's not Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay,
I really make it not concerned mafsid if you're just put too much salt on something, you really mafsid it.
If you make it not edible. No, so,
not edible is by mixing with other foods.
So we're going to talk about it a couple times, what it needs to be mafsid. But if I put pickles into my oranges, then that's a hefsed. That's a hefsed. It makes it not edible. No one will touch it anymore. I made it not edible. So really, if you wanted to do this idea in its grandest form, the guy would have a whole collection. I mean, he might have a whole counter full of these pachim, keeping in mind which ones are spoiled and not spoiled yet, or partially spoiled. And if I put food into a partially spoiled, then I also said it was hefsed. Or if I put this thing into that thing, I've also made it hefsed. So depending on what you do, you could have a whole pile of these. And so the theoretical of I put it onto the counter, and when it spoils, I throw it out. It's not so nice. In truth, that's not what they do. In truth, what the people, these Kashrus Shevi'is, what they do is
They put it into a plastic bag.
they put into a bag into the pot. There's a bag in there. They put the food in, okay, and then between courses or between meals, they put like a layer in between, like a piece of paper or something in between, and they pile more stuff. And then after a day or two, they throw the stuff. So they have 2 or 3 pachim. Okay, this is the Sunday pot. This is the Sunday pot. I put in breakfast, goes in first. Okay, and then after breakfast, I put in something else, a layer. I can put the piece of paper down, and I put the lunch, and then comes supper. And then by Tuesday, Wednesday, I throw this one out and start again with this big.
How do you know if it's a plastic bag?
Yes.
He said at the end of the day, once a day.
Right. So now, once a day, Lav Dafka, are you gaining from the spoiling? The theoretical is to leave this here for a week until it spoils and then throw it out. Wait at the end of the day, you didn't gain so much. On the other hand, you lost is because maybe your math should be a dime when you poured the different things on top of each other and you're not paying any cheshbon. But on the other hand, what do you want me to do with mine? I'm not going to have the whole room just full of Kashrus Shevi'is. I mean, like, it's not, how am I supposed to do that? So in Lamaisa, the people...
Eat up all your food.
Eat up all your food. Okay.
Why don't you just put something in the bag and throw it out?
So the people
Like,
are trying to do,
Cambodia,
the people are trying to do this upgrade, which is pretty standard nowadays. Okay, in Darachum, that's all he says to do. In the Chazon Ish, there's a sefer printed. It's called Kashrus Shevi'is. Well, Kashrus Shevi'is was printed the year right before the Chazon Ish died. The last week before he died, from some name, Reb Shapiro. It was approved by the Chazon Ish, and it says this Eitz also to do this thing with the Kashrus Shevi'is, the whole spiel. Okay, to do this thing. So that's the Eitz.
The cover?
No, it doesn't give all those details. It just says put it to the thing and leave it until it rots and then you throw it out. It doesn't say the problem of how we do it. No, what they're saying from Chaim Kanievsky supposedly said that in the olden days we used to just put into a bag from the garbage. 1952 was a pretty long time ago. I don't know when the olden days was. You know what I mean? So I don't know how long ago people were keeping Shevi'is so long ago. He told us, Rabbi Ramon, when they started. You know what I mean? It wasn't that long ago. So I don't know when the old days was. The Chazon Ish in 1952 was already telling people to do this Eitzah. And Rabbi Ramon is not so... The idea here is to try to avoid the Gramah of the Hefsid. It's not so clear, Rabbi Ramon makes this point in the same place, it's not so clear that you're really saving anything. You may be just well being Gramah Hefsid in a day from now, unless you keep the pot for a long time. Surely, if you do it the way most people do, which has end up having a lot of foods mixed together, you may be worse off than you were before. You may have been better off to just take a day's worth of food and throw it in the garbage. A meal's worth, pour your leftovers into a bag, put them in the garbage, and you're done. You may be better off. That's not what people do. Malai says people do this thing as trying to avoid Gram Hefsid. Yossi thinks it's not even Gram Hefsid the first way. He thinks the first way has not even a mila to the Gram Hefsid. They're at least trying to say, I'm avoiding Gram Hefsid by doing this Kashrus Shevi'is. So even if it's a mila, it's very unclear if it's how successful it is. Okay. Now, one last thing I wanted to tell you was, another example of Gram Hefsid is feeding, this is Chaim Kanievsky's example, is feeding children. It comes from the same place from the Chazon Ish, with his husband, feeding children. I take a 4-year-old and I give him a banana to eat. Okay, so he's going to eat a certain amount of the banana, but a certain amount of the banana is going to end up being smushed into his high chair. Okay, there's a certain amount of his food is not going to end up eaten in the way that it's supposed to be eaten. Okay, so if I give him the banana, maybe I shouldn't give a banana to a child because I know that he may end up not eating it properly. So maybe that's not treating it with Kedushas Shevi'is. So that's an example of the Gramah Hefsid. I did something you're allowed to do. Give someone to eat the food. They're not allowed to do that. If the child will choose to make a Gramah Hefsid, if he chooses to be mafsid, I was guarding that because I handed it to him, but I didn't do that b'yadayim. So therefore, it would be mutter to do it. In theory, that would be mutter to do it. He says you shouldn't do it. And actually, in the Kashrus, it says don't do it at all. But the Chaim Kanievsky explains, in theory, you're not supposed to do it as the chinuch shabbat. Okay? You're being mechanech the child that when you have Kashrus Shevi'is, we treat them in a certain way, and therefore you're mechanech him by saying to him, "I won't give you the banana because you're going to do that now." Of course, but that means the only issue then is a child who's a gil chinuch. Okay, a 2-year-old, it's silly to say, I'm going to be mechanech him to Kedushas Shevi'is. Of course, the reason why he pushes into his high chair is because he's 2 years old, because he is not right for that chinuch yet. But in a child who would be fit for the chinuch, to give it to him would be another example of a Gramah of Hefsid that min hadin would be mutter because the Gramah of the Hefsid is Hefsid Kashrus Shevi'is is mutter. If you fit into a place where there's a mitzvah chinuch for the child, then of course you wouldn't do it. But after Hefsid, it would be mutter.